I think there are places where big tech ought to be reined in, but mostly in their activities trying to censor people's speech, not based on obscenity or based on dangerous, say threatening speech that might actually put people's lives at risk, but because big tech seems to want to censor things so the left always gets to say what it wants and the right is silenced. But now the Biden administration is going to try and counter domestic terrorism, and they're going to go after us based on our thoughts and our words?
Yeah, they've figured out a way to actually outsource around the First Amendment. The government is not allowed to ban speech they don't like, which in the Biden administration's case is you and me and all of our friends. But they have figured out their allies in Silicon Valley can do it. And so they're literally now institutionalizing what they've been doing for a while, which is relying on those people, the Facebook, Google, Twitter, YouTube tech tyrants, to go ahead and put a muzzle on anything they dislike. And now the Biden administration, and Jen Psaki literally admitted this from the podium during a press conference, they're giving them tips as to what they don't like to hear. It's a grotesque abuse of the Constitution, Lars.
Jim, I'm guessing you're not a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer either, but let me throw something out there that I think relates to this. Years ago, I was talking to a prosecutor friend of mine, and I said, well, if you can't go out and wiretap these people, could you get a citizen to go and record it for you? And I was just asking as a matter of theory and on a story I was working on, and he said the minute that person begins to act as an agent of the police or anyone else, then it effectively is the government. Now, if you went out and taped something, Jim, and then you thought you had something that was evidence of a crime or a threat, you could bring it to the police. But if you were acting as their agent, in other words, they arranged, Jim, you go out and do this, and then we'll get the benefit from it, you become their agent. Is this the case where the White House is effectively saying openly, we'd like these people to do this, and then Facebook and Twitter and the rest become agents of the government? Because that would run afoul of the First Amendment, wouldn't it?
It sure seems to me like they've deputized them as the national thought police. And if that is the accurate description of how the law should be applied, then I think there are grounds for citizens to go ahead and start suing them over this. The goal and the rationale they're using here is to go ahead and stop domestic extremism, terrorism, and election interference, which are noble goals. But when they go ahead and start saying that short of incitement of violence or illegal activity, they want certain things removed from the public discourse, taken out of our shared information space, they're cheating. I mean, it's outright cheating, and it's time for us to stand up and say, no way, we're not going to take this.
Well, Jim, I was thinking about that I was going to be talking to you today as I was watching some of the testimony at this January 6th hearing today. And there was a cop who was sitting there. He said, well, these people tried to recruit me, meaning some of the rioters on Capitol Hill, which he called terrorists, although I thought the description he read from federal law actually fit the riots we've seen in big cities over the last year a whole lot better than it did the people who were in the Capitol building that day. But then he said something interesting. He said, they tried to recruit me. They walked up to me and said, are you my brother? Which, you might be trying to be familiar with somebody. I'm not sure that's recruiting you. But then he advanced the argument that people who identify with Donald Trump are white supremacists. I think going down this path takes us some dangerous places where the government effectively says, I understand when the government says you can't go make bombs, you can't go attack people, you can't overthrow the government. Good. I'm in favor of not doing all those things. But when you say if you identify with certain kinds of ideas, you're dangerous, when federal agencies like the FBI or other agencies start to take that approach, well, Jim, I'm sorry, you're a conservative. You're skeptical of government. You think the FBI has lied to us on occasion or maybe helped cheat in an election. Those are anti-American ideas. We're going to silence you. That's really dangerous, isn't it?
It's phenomenally dangerous. My book, Winning the Second Civil War Without Firing a Shot, I wrote a bunch of it before the election, but I finished it right after the events of January 6th. And I predicted that the Biden administration would use this to crack down and try to criminalize conservatism. And they're even bolder than I dared to think they would be. And they are literally now trying to use January 6th as an excuse to go ahead and take anyone who has opposing viewpoints and declare them a domestic extremist. And that is just so fundamentally police state in action that I think it's a place where all of us now can see the game, and no one is safe to sit on the sidelines. We all have to get involved. We all have to stand up for our rights and push back on this, or they're going to push us out of the public square.
Okay, so how do we go about what's the most effective way of doing that? Because now we're telling people if you push hard and say, I stand for these values, you're in trouble. And the government might just shut you down from a standpoint of speech. How do you fight back against that?
It's a little scary. I got to be honest. My wife and I had a discussion about this. I expect a knock at my door sometime soon, based on the title of my book and based on my activities. And I'm not doing a single thing that is illegal or anti-constitutional, but they're cheating the system so hard that risk is something anyone who stands up has to face. But if we don't, we won't have a chance to do it later. So you have to go ahead and speak out. You have to go ahead and, get involved in the political process. Get involved in, if you can, talk to lawyers. Find out if you've got cause for joining a class action suit. You've got to go ahead and get involved even at the local government level. And specifically in the upcoming election, we absolutely have to take back the House of Representatives from Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats and start putting the screws back to the people who think they can do this in a ostensibly free America.
Well, and Jim, I'm talking to Jim Hanson. He wrote Winning the Second Civil War Without Firing a Shot. He's a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran. This drives me nuts that when that man, Daniel, lost his last name, one of the Capitol Hill cops. So he reads out of the federal statute books and says terrorism is defined as somebody who goes out and commits criminal acts and threatens violence in order to achieve a political goal. And I thought, the streets of American cities have been filled for the last year with mobs of people saying, we demand you defund the police, and we're going to burn your town and assault people until you do. And they got what they wanted. They were actually successful in getting big cities to defund much of their police departments. Stupid move, but they got it. And nobody on the left is defining those people as terrorists. I've called them Antifa and BLM terrorist groups because that's what they do. They say we're going to trash your downtown and threaten your people till we get what we want. And crazily enough, they managed to get what they want in most cases. I agree with you. We got to fight back against this. And I don't want people ending up in jail or silenced on social media or having their free speech silenced in a situation like this. The book is called Winning the Second Civil War. And Jim, thank you again for your service in uniform.